Great. Well, we're joined by Jeneva again today. And as you probably remember, we've had several conversations with you, Jeneva. It's great to see you. And today, let's just talk about courageous conversations, because you and I both know there have been a lot of those going on in the pandemic. And it's one of the elements I know that we talked about when you and I first got together on adaptive leadership. So courageous conversations.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that it's in the air. I agree. I feel like the pandemic and the virtual working for so many of us, or not working, given the circumstances for so many industries and businesses, I think that now more than ever, what I've seen is a not only a need, but a real desire to say, okay, yeah, I've just got to say what I think. I've got to say what I feel. This isn't working out, or let's not do that. I just see people, leaders and those in formal authority and in informal positions, they're trying to be really productive around resolving issues, right? Competing priorities, especially because there's a lot going on for companies out there.
Well, and I noticed too that even if you take it at a sort of national or international level, there is lots of opportunity for different scientists, different leaders, different politicians to sort of disagree with each other in a constructive way.
Yeah.
It must be quite brave if, half of your colleagues are saying we ought to be doing this, to actually step forward and say, well, hold on a moment, I have a different opinion. And I really think we're missing a trick or two if we don't explore this avenue, or if we take that decision, it's going to have an impact over here somewhere. I mean, that's quite brave if your reputation's at stake.
I agree with you, Matthew. But what's so interesting to me is that, I think you and I have talked about this in our own work. For years, we've been hired to help kind of push people, provoke them a little bit, or create a holding environment where these courageous conversations can take place. But now they kind of have to happen in the moment, because so much is happening in the moment through virtual work. And people are realizing how important it is to really be courageous and to have those butterflies in your stomach and take risks, but with the intention always of preserving the relationship, right? Preserving the mutual respect and the kindness, but also raising maybe really challenging issues, but preserving that humanity.
Yeah, because you've got to, I know, because it happens in our own families when we're having conversations and things can get pretty the ability to be able to divorce what you're talking about from the person you're talking about it to, and there's, endless examples of where people you can see they're fighting really hard. I watched Barack Obama the other night on BBC about his new book. And you could tell he was really struggling to use the right words that kept out of what he was saying. Some of the sort of the more personal, more heartfelt feelings he was probably experiencing. And you could imagine in a business where your job depends on your relationships with people. Yeah. Maybe your remuneration does, or your bonus, whether you get furloughed, whether you get laid off. It's tough to be able to keep
super
that.
Tough.
Yeah.
Yep, so tough. And it's so of the moment, because you and I, for example, this week, we're engaging with clients where we know that the simple thing of going into breakout rooms, right, on Zoom, for example, you've got to be able to give people that space, maybe with 2-3 other people in a small breakout room, to kind of build that momentum to be courageous. Maybe in the larger group, if you're having a global meeting and you have no time or exposure to someone in Thailand, if you're sitting in New York, but this is your moment to have that courageous conversation online.
Yes.
So what are you going to do about it? And so it's really interesting to see the mechanics of how we interact with each other can play into that ability to have a courageous conversation.
Yeah. So, as we always do, we try and sort of relate this to, relate our experience or our thoughts or ideas to younger leaders.
Yeah.
Because they must, if it's tough at the top, it's even tougher further down the pecking order. So So what help could we, practical help could we give them? And we've said you really need to work hard to divorce the relationship from the conversation you want to have. That we know is really difficult to do.
Yeah.
Is there anything else they should be doing?
It's a really good question. And I wonder, so much of what I found over the last few weeks, my recent experience will inform this response, is especially in those situations where you might feel vulnerable, right, about your position, your role, your paycheck, the projects you get or the ones that you don't get. I think going back to your purpose and to that orienting kind of divining rod of, okay, so this is what's most important, regardless of who's doing the work or who's filling the role. And so can I focus on the issue and the work, and then maybe think about the preserving of the relationships that you need to do, right? So you still interact in ways that are mutually respectful and kind, but at the same time, you focus on the issue and getting down to that nugget of, okay, so what are we trying to do here? And what is our purpose in service of our mission or our goal or our bottom line even? That's going to be important these days.
Yeah, and sort of persevering as well.
Yeah.
When the other party may actually be behaving in a way that is pretty difficult. We've had talk of bullying in the press in the UK this week.
Yes, I saw that.
Someone might get quite heated because they think that what you're saying is a personal criticism of them, or either of them personally, even though you've very clearly sort of kept away from that, or maybe you're challenging their decision making. You've got to sort of persevere, and that takes quite a lot of resilience.
It does, doesn't it? And I think that the idea of resilience, of bouncing back, may be a really unfair and unrealistic expectation. And I wonder if instead of bouncing back, because there are things in today's environment you can't bounce back from, you don't want to, right? The death of a friend, or even losing someone's job, which for many people has meant losing their identity that they've held on to for decades, right? That has been important. So I wonder if that going into oneself and one's purpose around the equanimity that you just need to realize that so much is cyclical, right?
Yeah.
It'll pass. But that resilience is important, but I also think that reframing what resilience means to each individual and to using practices of resilience that calm the body and the thinking, as opposed to saying, I can withstand it.
Yeah.
That puts a lot of pressure on people in situations where they don't have a lot of control.
Yeah. And I suppose also that if you can practice it, if you can have the courage to have those conversations, and you keep the personal away from what it is you're discussing, and you persevere with expressing your point of view and why you hold that point of view.
Yes, the why. Yeah.
You will gain, however young you are, you will gain a reputation for someone who, speaks thoughtfully, doesn't involve personal sort of issues, is prepared to give ground on occasion and accept that maybe the person they're talking to has a point of view that's just as relevant, just as important. It must over time build your reputation as someone that people want to work with and people want to listen to, or at least
I imagine so.
Yeah.
I imagine so. The other thing that has helped me so much, especially now, but then when I think about how useful it is, I realize, wow, I've been trying to do that for decades, for a long time, which is just testing my reality.
Yes.
So if I'm in a situation and I think, oh my gosh, I've done something wrong, or wow, I really screwed up, or, I won't get this or that I need, or I'll lose my job. Yeah. Sometimes taking a step back and testing my interpretations with other people that I trust in the system in which I work or outside of, getting some hard-earned perspective can be really helpful for just kind of, calming down, and that perseverance, right? Standing in the heat without getting burned, by asking other people for their perspectives, their interpretations, because ultimately so many people can see the same thing in so many different ways. And that can be helpful to learn about that.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've had with some conversations I had recently, if you just fight that little sort of gnawing away in your head to say, go on, put your case forward, right. Challenge that viewpoint, attack that, or, come up with another data that's contrary to that. If you just avoid that, push it to one side, it can be quite a revelation as to how your perspectives, they may not totally change, but you do start to see why other people might think what they think and might behave in the way they behave.
Yeah, yes. I try to do that so often, especially now virtually. I don't know why it feels like more acute, in trying to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that the proverbial age-old putting yourself in someone else's shoes, right?
Yeah. So have the courageous conversation. Grip your fingers or whatever, or sort of scratch your wrist or whatever it is you do. But do it in a way that's thoughtful and planful, perhaps. And I suppose just accepting the fact even though you've had the courageous conversation and it may be very difficult, time does pass. It puts a
and one of the things about, at least in the let's say the tome of adaptive leadership, is making sure that you're creating for that resilience, that a sanctuary for yourself, right? Yeah. A relationship or a set of practices that allow you to renew. Personal renewal, especially now, is so critical for then being able to meet the next challenge or the next excitement, and enjoying now for now. I think a lot of people feel like, okay, when the pandemic's over, then I'll enjoy my life again. But we can really enjoy it now too. Right? There's the human relationships are still moving forward and happening every day.
Jeneva, as always, it's great to chat to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matthew. Always good to see you. Take care.
We'll just have to keep going with this, whether pandemic or no pandemic. We're just going to have to go for it.